Questions from the audience, from student, or from yeah, please.
How you mentioned the option of having neuroscience as a truly interdisciplinary subject only very early during the course of studies, like during the bachelor's. I would like to, although this is an HPP workshop, in Europe there have been projects before HPP, like facets and brain scale projects where I was involved. And we had also a graduate school there where we trained people into disciplines they were not originally trained in. And I had an interesting experience that those who really were strong in the project at the end were those that came with a very solid training in a classical discipline. I mean, we had really absolutely brilliant mathematicians and neurobiologists and physicists and computer scientists. And those were the ones that at the end of it, and even now in HPP, play a leading role because they still represented very strong discipline, but they were willing to communicate with the others, and they were willing during their graduate education to really embark into a new field and to contribute to building a new field, which is neurocomputation. So I would still maintain the idea that being too interdisciplinary from the beginning could generate some kind of weakness, that people are not really trained in any field in a solid way.
You're right. I'll repeat the question since the one in the online did not hear it. And you were referring to the problem is that the study during the bachelor will be too interdisciplinary and they will have no basic background. And I think this is the reason that what we are doing is we are trying to give them a double major. They are doing a full biology and a full psychology in this one here, or full biology and linguistics. So they will be expert in biology and in linguistics, or computer science, or biomedical engineer. Actually, this is a double major. And in part of it, they also get neuroscience. So this is a demanding program. It's much wider than the regular program, so it's more points, more ECTs. And these are the students that I think can combine the different disciplines since they're already trained by that. In addition, the students are coming from only computer science or only psychology will also be great and most of them are willing to and they want to change their direction. So I think the idea here is not to give a completely interdisciplinary education, but in two major disciplines. So they will have the right basis background.
I think that I would agree with you, and particularly at the level of the bachelor program, which was mentioned by Yuri in one of the slides. To go into a Bachelor of Neuroscience, there are a few universities in Europe that have Bachelor in Neuroscience. In my experience at the university in Trondheim, we have really had fun experiences where the individual bachelor programs that are run by the traditional faculties allow the students to take an introductory course in neuroscience, which we started like 7 years ago outside of from the Kavli Center. And the course is outrageously successful to the point that it's killing itself. We now have more than 100 bachelor students taking the course from a real variety of disciplines that I would have never dreamt of. So aside of physics and chemistry and math and computational neuroscience, we actually have a lot of history students. We have a lot of music students. We now actually have a workshop with jazz musicians. How does the brain allow you to improvise? And it's immensely successful. So I think to me, neuroscience is really a multidisciplinary field, and I would vote to keep it that way.
But doesn't this reflect already that it's a combination of excellent teachers that can bring their field into the center of the attention of the students, a combination of fun, the way you teach? There must be a fun component nowadays. It's not like this courses we used to take it when we went into university. And I think the attractiveness of a program or the attractiveness of a course largely depends on the teachers. So I would like to come back also to Alois's question, right? To teach the teacher to become one of the excellent teachers, right? This, I think, is the most important.
I fully agree, and I think it is important, but it actually has always been important. I think most of the students who choose a discipline probably were biased because they had a teacher at high school that really taught the discipline in a very appealing way. But I think it is important. So for a lot of the PhD programs that I know about, it's becoming more and more common in Europe to have actually a component to teach the teachers or to teach the supervisors. So how do you actually engage in your master's student education and your PhD student education? And it's from my own experience, it's really fun to be on that side as well, to be a teacher, to teach teachers. So, but I think it's really important, yeah.
I'd like to ask a question. It sort of comes from my background. I spent a decade in the military and in the industry before going into academia. And I find that in the academia, if I want to do a research project, I have to be an electrical engineer, a biological major, I have to be a psychologist, I have to be a mathematician. And when I was in the industry and in the army, what we would do is we would bring together a group of experts and try to collaboratively solve a problem. And I know that in the end I have to give in my doctorate and I have to stand in a job talk and get my own position. But I sometimes feel that in the academia we're missing something by not giving a sort of incentive for 5 or 6 PhD students to work together on one project and create a single piece of research. And sort of sometimes I feel I'm trying to be so interdisciplinary that I become mediocre at everything I'm doing instead of just being a very good psychologist and biologist or a very good electrical engineer. I need everything. I was wondering what your thoughts are on this.
I 100% support what you just said. That is what I tried to say. He said it in much better words. Now, we need people that are great electrical engineers and great biologists, and we have to make them work together in a team to solve a problem. And then you can solve the real hard problems, because they will all bring in their expertise. It's much better than having, you called it mediocre, which is a strong word. I would call it a slightly diluted education. It's probably the same thing.
Would you like to comment on that? Anna?
Yes, on that. I'm the Vice Dean of Medical Education in Shiba Medical Center, and I want your, because in, say, a different way, we really collaborate and incorporate medical students into many aspects of research. And I am wondering if medical students can be a part of the programs, especially if they do a PhD. And also to your question, at least in medical students, we do the same. They are not just one process. They are doing so many, and they are involved both in epidemiology, statistical, engineering, and I would not say they are mediocre. And also we do a lot of work to integrate what they are doing. So we have like meetings, and then they can present and really be involved and, for instance, give a solution from one field to another, like gene expression to cognition. So I was asking whether you would be willing to incorporate medical students to your program.
I'm perfectly willing to speak on my behalf. So for FENS, it is really important to have medical students in the program because, as was said this morning, the interaction with the clinic, where people are really dealing with the patient, is absolutely important to get the scientific level that we want to achieve. In my own university, our own center, 25% of the PhD students are medical students because we have a combined medical research program, which, for example, also exists in the Netherlands, which I originated from. There's a very strong program for PhD students to combine their medical specialization with a PhD. And that can be a clinical PhD, but quite often it is, and that refers a little bit to your question, it is a clinician that teams up with a basic scientist or even a larger cohort then make it possible. So I think without medical people, neuroscience would not be really an interesting discipline. But that's me.
But just a minute, I just try to answer, maybe to comment on what you raised. I think there are maybe, again, two levels for that. So one is the practical level that, for example, you in the lab are facing a specific problem. Now the question is whether you or your supervisor will go to the nearby expert in that matter and create a collaboration, or you will have to solve it by, diving into the code and try to create something. So this is one level. I think that, this is would be a personal matter. So whether your supervisor or yourself are willing to cooperate and how much, and not all of the scientists are doing it. So this is one thing. The second one is maybe whether we can do something in the educational level to enhance it, or in the I would say institutional level to accelerate such collaboration. So create or fund only projects which are really interdisciplinary, that brings a computer scientist, a cognitive scientist, and a clinician together to work together on one question. So I think this might be a way to try to enforce something like that.
I just want to follow up on what you said, and maybe to try to converge the last, what Karl-Heinz said and what you said, because, and I'm very happy that everything combines also with the previous panels, because I think we are all, in neuroscience especially, because it's a leading flagship, in a transition mode. Because if I want to be very honest, personally, I would ask everybody to study either mathematics or philosophy as the first degree, just to get some real tools of thinking. And then start life. But it's not like that. I mean, not in this era. So, and on the other hand, I fully agree that you have to be exposed to all areas. You don't have to be a major or understand everything up till the real research in each area. So the thing that we are working together, various faculties, various research groups, we don't have any other alternative. We have to learn to combine these languages and work together. We used to, each professor with this group, and as far as you are from the other, you are more unique. And nowadays we have, in order to come with a solution, we have to work together and to change the matter of working that we were used so many years in the academia, faculties and all that. And I think it's changing. We are not bringing a message, but it takes time. And I think here our message is that we have to help these changes to happen. And the education is more personal. If you want to be part of a group, or if you, advisor, can combine, that you need to know at least 2 or 3 languages in science, not languages other, and that you have to be exposed to all tools, and you come to the university after the army especially, exposed to many things, more than any other and more than before. So I think these things are going to change. Our duty, the way I see it, is to foster this transition, this translation. And it has to be through the agencies, through, as I mentioned in the morning, the AAAS that is already going to change, through the defense or other agencies that will force and enable the academia to make the big change, because it's not easy to change that.
I was wondering, at least in Europe, we have so many, not only in neurosciences, but let's stay with neurosciences, so many different master programs, right? Due to the fact that the universities have to compete with each other, and they not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but they just take what they have, right, and restructure a little bit, take little bits from here, little bits from there, and then it's a master studies in neuro something, right? And the neighboring university has a similar type of master core classes, but it's labeled with something else, right? In the end, wouldn't it be advisable to have indeed a core curriculum that is designed in such a way that this is the minimum of neuroscience master studies that we do know when we recruit students, for example, for a neuroscience PhD school, that we know what they had been trained on, that there is a common ground in a way, and not something a little bit here and a little bit there, and what certain people call a dilution of the education, and others call it, I'm a mediocre master student of a program XYZ.
You want to say something? So it is challenging to respond to that. I feel very personal that I don't think it would be good or it would be fun to have like an equalized educational program throughout Europe. I think from my experiments talking to master students, but also PhD students that particularly choose to go to a particular program, and I'm sure that you could say something about that, why people come to the Neuroscience program. It is quite often a choice. For example, a lot of the master students that come to NTNU in Trondheim choose it because we have a very explicit computational component in the program. We're one of the few master programs in Europe that actually has that explicitly mentioned. In addition, we have neurophilosophy. And students find that a quite appealing combination. And I would find that a pity to see that disappear. And I think it also is difficult for universities. I mean, I'm also part of a university and I have some administrative duties. Not every university does actually have the facilities to teach everything. And I think that is why this mobility of students becomes so important. So what we try to do is cover up our lack of expertise by sending students to other universities to pick it up. And that's what we do with the neuroscience program. Norway is a really small country. There's only 5 million people and there's 3 neuroscience centers. So we actually don't even cover the width of neuroscience. So we're actually now building a program that allows students to go abroad. So we have funding from the Norwegian government to make that happen. And I actually think it's more fun to do it that way than synchronize everything. And I know that people have tried it in the States. They had this extensive description of neuroscience programs. It didn't work. Eventually, everybody ran into different directions. So, and I think that's more fun, actually.
I completely agree with you. I think it was meant provocatively because defining what is a core curriculum I find very difficult, right? How much do you put in? What do you exclude? And that's, I think, the major challenge here, at least for the PhD program.
It's what you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, we took advantage of what the fans did a few years ago, and we took that core curriculum and we make a skeleton of that. And this was the minimum requirement for the program we set with the different partners. And then, obviously, each partner has his own touch, his own way of seeing things. And the students are very happy with that. But at least, at the master level at least, we have a common pathway, something basics that they... And the way of seeing a core curriculum like this, I think it's okay. Because, of course, neuroscience is such an expanding domain. You can't expect everybody knows anything about everything. It's not possible. And I would like just to come back about medical education. What we do in Bordeaux is that we welcome medical students, provided that a certain level of background in science, right directly in the second year of the master program. And what has been launched in France too is for the best medical students. Right after the first year, they can compete at the national level for a program run by the INSERM. And during the third year, they do at the same time the third year at the medical school and the first year of the master programs. So it's a mixed up thing. And then they go to the second year of the master program with 1 year ahead of everybody else. They still are very good, even if they are majoring 2 different disciplines. And then they go back to the regular medical schools for 4th year, 5th year, 6th year. And then when they get to residency, they can apply for MD, PhD programs. The problem we have with those students is is that, of course, they are going to end up 3 or 4 years after all the other guys. We can find a job in the private sector and get well paid. And if we cannot be sure that those students were going to keep them in the academy, it's very difficult for us to tell them, well, work 3 or 4 more years and you will make money later. So it's kind of an issue we have. But that program is running very well, and the students, I had one of the students, I supervised one of the students, are exceptional, even if they do 2 things at the same time.
So I think that you brought us maybe to the third point here, if we more or less finish the discussion about the curriculum, or we can come back to that later. And this is, I think I would like to pass this question or thought to the student is about career development beyond academy and industry. So what non-scientific skill students need to develop in order to develop new career? What should they master to be competitive, to find a job and create new jobs on their own? How do they become entrepreneurs? And maybe the question is whether the current programs should allow or should give these different courses, and what should be these different courses, or are we now, trying to be a college-like? So I would like to move this question to the student. Yeah.
I feel that we're lacking in computational background, and the secondary programs for the first degree are lacking. I mean, you don't have.
Not about. I'm speaking about not educational, not academic lectures. What lectures would you like to have?
Valuable tools for the rest of your life. Like if you know computer science, you can always do great things outside the academy. And if you only know how to do certain things within your scope of your research, then it's harder for you to do other things.
I'd like to say something that will probably make me very unpopular right now, but I actually left the industry and went to academia, and I like the fact that academia is purely the love of knowledge, philosophy, and I would not like to see, I see from my father's generation, who was also a professor, I see the academia slowly becoming sort of a secondary research division of the industry. And I don't like this trend actually. I like the fact that the academia is somewhere you go to obtain knowledge and study things. And I think that the question of all the time asking, how can we make the academia a training ground so that we'll be better people for the industry, is something that takes the academia to a place where it shouldn't be, in my humble opinion.
Maybe it shouldn't be, and I'll just mention another point, that both Europe and now also the NIH are asking explicitly in every grant that you are submitting to have a full section about career development. How will that student be able to go beyond the university later on? So I think we have to think about it and try to maybe, bring the right courses. And I'm also agree with what you said, that the academy should be knowledge-wise, but there are some changes that we have to face. So the question is how and what should be done. Hugo, you wanted to mention or to say something? Or?
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak up like this. There is a tendency, I think, somewhat justified to be a bit negative about this move to entrepreneurship and the need to define all the milestones and all the results that you're going to achieve in projects that you haven't started. So there's a downside to that, but on the other hand, who's going to pay for this complete freedom to do whatever you want? I don't think many times in history the situation for academic funding has been as good as it is in our days, if you look at it rationally. So it's okay to have this kind of translational and more entrepreneurial things as well, especially with career development. I think it's maybe not appropriate for every type of research, but in many cases, like neuroscience, there may be a lot of opportunities, and it's good to train people so that they can be a bit flexible in where they go after they finish their PhDs.
I'm at Edinburgh University, and what they have in general is, it's called Institute of Academic Development. So I think that part is kind of outsourced of the school, and all the students have access to those courses, and they range from like, there's even an hour every Monday or so where you could take your computer and say, my laptop doesn't work and this doesn't, like, it really ranges from completely basic things to 3-day workshops on how to give presentations, but making it more like bigger for the whole, or for just several schools or the whole university, probably gives a bigger range of things that one could do.
So these are extracurricular courses, so you can take it or not. It's up to you. And the students that are sitting here are looking for such courses, or is it only the EU and the NIH that ask us to do it? So I think that I don't see that any, at least demand from the students here, that to do anything like that. Or maybe I'm wrong.
I think that's the ongoing. I'm really interested in those things, so I know where to search and I know where to go, and I think I'm really pleased to have those offers, and they free. It's excellent education. There people coming from, we had a course with 2 artists and they basically taught us how to present and what to take care of. But I do as well have other PhD students doing a PhD with me, they're not interested in that at all. So they would say, this is one day that I lose and I don't want to go there. I find that sad because it's a great offer, but my question maybe is as well, can you force them, or if you force students that are not interested, would they actually take something home?
You're right, I think. Yeah, please.
I think 2 things about this connection. From my perspective, as somebody who finished the program of the Bachelor here at Neuroscience. First of all, I think a lot of people who finish the Neuroscience program here feel that the only opportunity of the year in Neuroscience is able only if you have a computational background. I know most of the industries look for people that can do computational, all kind of computational stuff. And a lot of people who don't have this background feel they don't have what to look for in the industry of neuroscience. That's the first thing. I think that it's not, at least in Israel, from what I know, the perspectives that are not computational are not strong enough for people to go to the industry right now. Or that's the feeling the students have. And the second thing I want to say that I can say for myself that the science I want to do is more, I want to do basic science, and I don't feel that there is a place for it in the industry, from what I know about it right now. And I think a lot of people doing the masters and PhDs feel they want to do more basic science.
What if you discover something in your basic science that turns out to be very valuable and you have no idea where to start, patents, and what are your obligations towards your employer, and what can you present, what can't you present? Maybe good to have some kind of background in that kind of subject matter. I think it would be very useful to have at least a small...
We should also expect the supervisor to know that.
But maybe I'll add another number, not statistically checked, but and maybe this is the reason that the government are asking for it. And again, this is the public money. I think that out of maybe 300 or 400 students that start bachelor degree, it doesn't matter if it's in biology or chemistry or neuroscience, maybe 10% will continue, or 20% will continue to PhD, master, and maybe 5% will come back to the industry, to the academy, and then 10% will go to the industry. And what about the rest, which are another 200 students from each university? And I guess this is maybe what brought the discussion. And maybe it's not so relevant for the students who are sitting here or are part of a PhD program, but it might be relevant for the ones who are not continuing in the university and would like to go to have some kind of a paramedical work or other things. So maybe this is the reason. But,
From the survey that we did, that we're currently analyzing in FENS, there's a clear question from a high percentage of students who want to have training opportunities in this edge between basic science and applied science going into industry. And I would argue that what we heard this morning, at least from the pharma industry, is that there's a desperate need for people that can work in the field. the pharma industry is essentially lacking targets. So if basic scientists don't come up with the targets and translate them into industry, we're going to stay at that non-productive setting that we currently are.
I would like to bring up another point that I think no one discussed so far, and it relates also to the industry and the neuroscientists going to, like someone said earlier, to feed the beast. So I think that one of the basic courses that every university should give to in their bachelor's degree in neuroscience is something that has to deal with the ethics, since we're all dealing with the things that can get dangerous. So this is the thing that we kind of got, because I did my first degree in psychology and biology, and in the psychology part we did have some kind of course that was really important in my eyes, and I think it should be a standard.
I'd like to think not about the previous discussion. First of all, I think we're all disregarding something very important, is that in the industry there's a lot of research and development, and the R&D in the industry, I don't know the sizes, but I'd say it's even larger than all the academia put together. So there's a lot of research that goes on in the industry, and that's what you were saying. There should be different kinds of research, and I think the academia is more basic science. And the second thing I wanted to say is that if you're going to accounting or law school or medicine or nursing, you're studying a profession under the academia. But philosophy, no one goes to study philosophy in order to work as a philosopher in a company. And I think maybe neuroscience it might not be a profession. It might be more of an area of study. And if 200 people are interested in studying philosophy, no one comes later to the dean of philosophy and says, why do we not have 200 positions in the industry for 200 philosophers? So why does neuroscience have to provide 200 jobs?
Well, I'm going to answer you about my country. If you run a program of philosophy in my country and you cannot provide to the government office what is the output of your students, if they do not get a job, they are going to close your program. That's it.
So may I ask what you provide as an outlet for 200 philosophers in Bordeaux?
So I don't know. I'm not philosopher. But I can talk about, because one of my close friends is teaching Greek and ancient Latin. And she had not enough students. So they first closed a bachelor program. And then they say, after a couple of years, you don't have any more bachelor program, so your master program should be closed. And then a program was closed. And then they come and see her and say, well, you're not teaching any more Latin and Greek, so you should teach something else. And then she taught language expressions for other students. And then a couple of years later, they went and find her and said, okay, you do not teach Latin, you do not teach Greek, and nevertheless, you're a specialist of that. So I think you're no more a full academic now. You should go back as a high school teacher. And she said, no, I'm still working on my research about, well, she's a specialist about the Latin literature at the Augustus period and the political implication of that. Well, I don't know if anybody cares about that, but she cares. And she said, I'm still doing my research, so I'm still a faculty professor. But that's a trend in my country, in France. If you do not provide, and they even ask you how much your former students make. Yes, that you get a job that is at the level of a graduate program. They don't care either he's doing neuroscience or not. They want to know how much he gets, how much he earns, and if he has a permanent job. That's what they care about. So we have to provide figures for that, and we have to provide the students some kind of training that will increase the probability that they get a job. And
which is positive or negative? I can't exactly tell what you're talking about.
Is it positive or negative?
Well, I deal with that. Actually, I have, for 60 students at the master level, 10 are medical doctors, so I'm sure they will get a job. There's no problem with that. Half of them, they get...
doctors to study everything. I think that's the solution.
I don't know, but they get a job, at least in medicine. And then 15 students left, 10 get a PhD position in Bordeaux, and 15 all over abroad. And the ones who are left, they get some job in the industry, but I was surprised this morning that we didn't talk about the fact that there is a crisis in the industry, job opportunities. Some of my friends work for AstraZeneca. They were fired a couple of years ago. One of my friends worked for GSK, and she was very successful. She was fired 4 years ago. She launched her own business. And what I want to do now is not only to train the students to get a job in the current industry process, but also to think about what is going to be the next industrial work. I mean, the small organization, they are going to settle, for instance, AstraZeneca, they move around Boston at the MIT, and they settle only the heads were there, and they cut all the other research. And in Sanofi Aventis in France, they are cutting, well, I discussed with the director 1 month ago, and they are cutting everything in neuropsychiatry. So people they don't get fired, they get 7 years of salary, and they are not allowed to take a job back, but they have to, if they're more than 50 years. And that's terrible. So we can even send our students in that, but we have to train our students, because we know they won't stay all in the academy, to find a job, any kind of other job that can be related or not to neuroscience. What we train the students is to think that they have a certain level of education, have certain ability to deal with computer things, to deal with communication, to do a literature survey, to work as a team, and these are very high qualities that can be used for any kind of jobs that need those qualities. And I think this is important.
I want to say something about what you said earlier about too many people finishing the bachelor's and not going to advanced degrees. And I think one of the problems about the connection between the academy and the industry is that right now you have to finish a PhD in order to go to the industry. The problems that we have right now are finishing the PhD and then going to the industry. And I think people that want to work in industry don't want to do a PhD a lot of times. They feel prolonging their stay in the academy is not for them, and they want to do something more with another mind, and that's why they don't stay for the PhD, and then they don't go to the industry. And I think that the connection to the industry should be earlier if we want to have more people going to this field.
Hugo's trying to say.
Yeah, can I comment on that? There are lots of PhD programs now where you can do a PhD in industry in collaboration with the university that really try to address this issue that you mentioned, which I think is a fair point. So, yeah.
I just think it's not strong enough right now for enough people to go to the industry.
Yeah. So it was mentioned before that more and more that this kind of research is being pushed.
And as I said, there are more and more programs like that. Starting to develop. So
yeah. It's very interesting what I think you brought forward, the death of academia. It's maybe I said it. I always like to elicit laughs, but it's really a sad clown.
I was implying a slight cold,
because sorry.
I was implying a much less.
Well, I need to get the shock effect. So what I'm thinking is, is perhaps, maybe even without perhaps, we have failed at selling the value of knowledge. Even the lady from Teva this morning says, "What are you giving us in exchange? We have the billions and we are giving you all the stuff, and I'll come and give you a few lectures." Yeah, and then the problem is we're talking here, so the political level is not represented here in a way. So we're talking with the students, the students are talking with us, and then there's this cloud. In the cloud there is industry, who really have, that's what everybody should ambition to, and have the power because they have the money. And then there's the political cloud above there somewhere, and there of course. So really, I'm realizing now, late at my age, to realize it, that we haven't communicated to that part of the world adequately what our value added is to society and maybe to industry, but it doesn't have to be to industry per se. I don't know whether I heard well, but that's what you elicited in the project. So I'm not even expecting an answer what we can do, although I see,
I think that I won't give an answer, but I think that at a certain type of period that we are, and I'm not sure that I'm agreeing with Hugo. At least I feel that the government are giving less money to the universities. On the other side, and this is one thing, there is more need for treatment of brain disorders. And at least when I was a student in the Hebrew University, I never heard about any disease of the brain, although I learned neurobiology. This was for the full PhD. So I think that if you take these things together, I think that, and there are more and more grants in the directions of applicative neuroscience, and that in a way creates some kind of a move from basic to more applicative neuroscience. I don't think that we should abandon the basic neuroscience. We should keep it. I hope that the universities are not going to close units just because you don't have enough positions for philosophers. So I think we should somehow keep the university to create knowledge, but maybe have a branch that is giving more or bringing more money to the university through this applicative project. But that's a solution, a possible solution.
But in a way, the message that we are sending, I know, I mean, that's what we're trying to do. That's why, there's the money, so we sell ourselves some, but we are covering up a part of our soul, and we're not saying, look, this has value as well.
That's true. I think that now, I think this is now a need and something that is interesting. You don't do it only because you might get money. I think at least in Tel Aviv University, most of the labs who are doing research on brain disorders are doing it because it interests them. If they are surprised, what this protein is doing there and how could they treat it. Not that they want to have they also want to have another patent or another drug, but this is not the motivation, I think. And I think it should stay like that.
And the crazy thing is that, crazy but interesting thing, very interesting evolution is that, and this is just my sense, I'm no expert of course in this, is, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. You have these young people who are doing very interesting things, I think, and they are also putting money towards education, towards high school education. Mr. Zuckerberg is putting hundreds of millions of dollars explicitly towards underserved high schools in the United States, perhaps elsewhere also. And so that pushes me in the direction. I have one of my best students, actually, he's a French student, master's student. He said, Charles, my desire is to do a startup, not for necessarily economic gain or so on. He's a brilliant, brilliant student. And that pushes me to say, okay, well, maybe I have to build a startup with you so that I can keep working with someone interesting. So, I'm talking from two sides of my mouth. I don't have the solution, in other words, but maybe you do.
Maybe last comments or so.
Word on the applicative, non-applicative science issue. I think we have to remember that we're on the, I would say, right side of the campus or of the university, because every year, the departments are being shut down because of teaching Latin and because of teaching, last year it was the French literature here in Tel Aviv, and also in Hebrew University. And when you say about your colleague, it's the same story all over. So we are on the good side of the, not good, but we're on the side that benefits from it, because the money from these department goes to neuroscience eventually, because our field is growing and therefore.
From which department?
What?
Well, I hope that no other department has shrank because
yeah, of course.
Of this.
Money goes from French literature, which is now shut.
Well, it's not as simple, and I don't think it's like that. Yeah.
But departments which are not, which has no implication for the work, are being shut.
Okay. Neil?
Maybe it's also something towards the next session, but I think a big area of career development, an area where students and career can be developed is in the hospitals these days. So there's a lot of money, a lot of research of all kinds, from translational to clinical and patients care. And I think this is part of what as the university should provide to students right from day one to make them one of the candidates for this area of heavily developed research within the clinical setup.
Yeah, that's something that we are going to work on.
Discuss.
Last comment.
Okay, so I think up to now we talked about career development in the industry, but we haven't talked more about education to the general public. I think one of the places that people can go from the academia to do more applicable things is education to the public. And I can say that I organize public lectures for the general public, and I can say that neuroscience is the most valuable. It's the lectures that people most come to. They say it's fascinating and you want more of it. And I think it's something that should be used. I think there's a reason people love neuroscience so much in the general public. Bestseller books and movies, people love it. And I think we should use it. We should put more thought into educating the general public and create more jobs for people to educate the general public. And also there can be applications for neuroscience in education of other stuff. There's a lot of applications from studies in neuroscience to education, to ways of educating people with ADHD, people with all kinds of learning disabilities, and I think this field is not strong enough.
I think that you're taking it forward and trying to enhance the visibility, and this is something really appreciated. So thank you for doing it. I would like to maybe to end the session if there are any comments from the panelists. So I think that what I learned at least, and this is something that I'm going to move to the bachelor student, that there are in Europe quite a lot of possibilities for master and PhD, either through the Neuroscience or through the FENS or through the HBP, and I think this is something that I was not aware of, and I think this will give them. At least we have a few more positions to offer them when we have to give the report. So thank you. We have some slight problem with the beamer, so let's see whether we fix it, and we'll move to the next lecture after these 2 minutes technical solution. Thank you very much.